And I will call this meeting to order. Dr. Joyner, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Let us stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Good evening, colleagues and the community listening in. Sorry. Again, in order to preserve everyone's right to speak, I'll ask that you only mute yourselves when recognized by the chair. Then please mute yourselves immediately after speaking. If background noise or interruptions continues, then I will mute all microphones and only unmute and mute myself when you're recognized to speak. Please observe our bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order by keeping the discussion to the matter at hand, on which the board can take some action and wishes to discuss. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes for January 11th. Mr. Conway?
I move that the minutes of the January 11th meetings be accepted.
Second.
Properly seconded. Any discussion?
Madam President.
Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. I like the idea that this agenda has eliminated much of the discussion. I always felt that it was kind of editorialized, and that it just reports what is happening at the meetings. Unfortunately, I can't tell because with these minutes, it talks about everybody who voted, but it doesn't list what the vote was. And also, so if you look at, say, elected president, it shows every board member, including students. So anyone in the future looking at this may be confused by the fact that the students aren't an actual vote. So I would hope, I'm not going to vote for these minutes because I think that they need to be corrected. The second piece of this is there was a lot of other activity that occurred. There were a couple of motions that were, for instance, motion to amend the agenda that were voted down. None of those motions are in this report. Minutes are supposed to report what happened, not ignore losing votes and just put winning votes on there. So for that, I'm going to vote against these minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Dr. Jordan, did you have your hand up, or Mr. Wilcox? I saw something on this side of the screen, but I can't tell what it was.
No, I didn't.
Okay, thank you.
I have my hand up.
Any further, Mr. Mayor Elicker, go ahead.
So I agree that with Mr. Golson that there should be a balance between pithy minutes and capturing the relevant details, and I might suggest that we wait to approve these and have the individual that's drafted the minutes go back and do some more details, because I do think there's very few details in this at all, and I think it's important to cover a little bit more and also clarify the student votes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Elicker. Any other discussion? Okay, so my guess is we would have to withdraw the motion in order for them not to be approved at this meeting, and then corrections to be made and be brought back at our next meeting. Mr. Conway?
I withdraw that motion.
I withdraw the second.
Thank you. Okay, so if Ms. Manning could just make sure to add, maybe view the recordings and add a little more detail, and also all of the votes that were taken, even the ones that failed to the meeting, and then we can bring them back for discussion and action at our next full board meeting. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Public participation.
Dr. Joyner, are you ready for timekeeping?
Yes.
Okay. First speaker is Sadie Marshall. You may speak.
Hi, does my 2 minutes start now?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to say that I am very, very upset with the board because I'm a white woman and I'm watching a lot of these members of the board, okay, white members of the board, even African-American members of the board. You guys need to get a thick skin. It seems like that you guys are in your personal feelings and have such a personal problem with Mr. Goldson, and the parents, the community is tired of it. You guys are trying to censor him. You guys are trying to put your foot on his neck, and it's not right. All because he raises real questions such as, why are white contractors making more money and getting more jobs out here than Black and brown people in our community? So what is the problem? What is the problem? Because he's asking a real question, okay? You guys need to get a thick skin. It's embarrassing to watch you guys up here. You guys are literally embarrassing the community, how you guys go back and forth. It's like you guys are teenagers, like children. And you spent thousands of dollars investigating Mr. Goldson for no reason at all. Do you know that my daughter has special needs and I could have got more paraprofessional time for my daughter? Do you know that there's people literally begging and pleading with PPT chairs to get services for their children, and you guys wasted all of that money for no reason, investigating this man simply because he's asking real questions that need to be asked.
Time.
That is unacceptable.
Time.
Matt,
Time.
Our next speaker is Vicky Grubar. Ms. Grubar?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God, thank you. Okay. My name is Vicky Gruba, and I'm the parent of a kindergartner at Worthington Hooker. My curious and social 5-year-old very much struggled in remote learning, frequently crying that she hates computer school. My daughter was so excited for her first opportunity for in-person learning, and we were so grateful as parents she had the choice. I'm here today to share that from our perspective, the first week of hybrid learning went beautifully. Our administrators and teachers worked so hard to get ready and communicated to us as quickly as they had information, and were always responsive to my questions. I'm sure there are kinks to work out, like in any new process implementation, but safety was not sacrificed, and any blips were not felt by my daughter or our family. I want to thank our teachers, administrators, and those on the board who got us to this point. My petite daughter bravely bounded into her school for the very first time Tuesday with her huge backpack and her mask, after waiting in a distance line out front while Jackson 5 played in the school courtyard. She was warmly greeted by teachers and staff and joined her peers. More than half in her class chose in-person learning. Parents and children excitedly waved at each other, and the energy was no less than joyful. I was anxious all day, as I imagine the first day as a kindergarten mother is, under even the most normal circumstances, but she had a wonderful day. Every day of in-person learning so far, she's had a cheerfulness and a lightness about her and pride in her schoolwork that she did not have even one day in remote learning. She needs the school environment, as different as that environment must be to keep everybody safe in these times. There's an energy and a magic in the classroom that is still present and simply not able to be replicated in a remote learning situation. So again, I want to express my sincere gratitude and applaud everyone who worked so hard to create a safe and joyous first week at Hooker. The consensus from at least the parents that I have interacted with has been similar. Happy kids, happy teachers, happy families.
Time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jessica Light.
Hello, I'm Jessica Light. I'm a New Haven teacher. I'm doing something that I normally don't, where I'm talking to you without pre-writing it. I'm going to talk a little slower this time to make sure you understand. I'm a teacher and I don't want to die. And I want to focus on my students. In order to focus on my students and make sure that they get the education that they deserve, I need the city to create a plan or unified safety protocols so that I don't focus my attention on micro health decisions that I'm not equipped to make, that are preventing me from focusing on my kids. So for instance, originally we were told the windows needed to be open by the safety inspector. Now we're told that the windows don't need to be open because the filters are in there. So then I go home and I research how to tell if there's enough airflow in the room. And I see a report that says that as long as you keep the CO2 levels under 700, there's little risk. So then I say, okay, I buy a CO2 monitor, I put it in my room, and I see maybe it doesn't need the window open. Maybe I can have the kids more comfortable. And I test how the level of the CO2s without the windows open, and I test it with the windows open, and with the windows open, it's at 400, close to outside. With the windows closed, it goes up to 785. So then I have to figure out, how do I adjust the window amount so that I get under that 700 threshold that I'd seen? None of this has to do with teaching the kids. And I am stuck focusing on all these tiny, minute things. When a kid can't get their Chromebook working.
Our next speaker is Citywide Parent Team. Please state your name.
My name is Najija Ife Waters, and I'm a Citywide Parent Team president. I'm going to start off with a quote by Desmond Tutu. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. One of the things that I want to say that I really enjoyed was being a part of the courageous conversations about racial. I think that was a very good workshop. And I think that the board during their retreat would benefit from that workshop that took place with the New Haven Public Schools. I say all this to say this. It is unfair that you guys are doing what you're doing to Mr. Golson. Now, everyone know me and Mr. Golson have had our fair share of words back and forward, but so have everyone else. And I think it's totally unfair. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you guys are going to continue this hoopla, I learned that word from our superintendent, this hoopla around each other, then you need to go back and look at how many times that Dr. Joyner was out of character, how many times everyone else before this new leadership was out of character. Now they say the fish rots from the head. You guys are very embarrassing. You keep up the most chaos than I've ever seen. And yet you guys have your issues with me, right? But like I told you before, I'm not here for you guys. I'm here for the parents. My job is to inform them, is to advocate for them, is to help empower them and show them how to navigate through this urban district, especially when we have a board like the board that we have. It is totally unfair. There's nothing wrong with someone asking a question about why you have.
Our next speaker is Charles O'Connell.
Hi, my name is Charlie O'Connell. I have a student in first grade, and I'm just want to voice my support for the decision to open the schools last week. I thought the teachers and administrators did a great job of welcoming my child and of keeping us as parents informed with the procedures and guidelines for safely returning to school. I want to acknowledge Ms. Gethings and Ms. Clarino, the administrators at our child's school, that they are doing a good job. And I want to offer generally speaking, to our community to give the administrators and the teachers the time, the patience that they need to handle this challenging situation. And I want to applaud the board for making the decision that they made, which obviously was a tough decision, to bring kids back to school. In our case, it has been very positive and the right thing for our child who's in the New Haven Public Schools. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rodney Williams.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to welcome the new board. I haven't got a chance to speak with you guys. It's been a while. I just want to talk about what's going on with Darnell. Before the majority of you guys even got on the board, the new members, we talked about minority contractor jobs. We actually talked about that for like 5 years. Paul Bass did an article. He brought up the disparities. When I was vice chair of school construction with Mayor Harp, we had you guys do a deep dive, and we did expose then what we were talking about was accurate. This information never really got to another level because what I thought was that the board was going to do the right thing. You didn't. And I want y'all to know this, that I'm not going to sit back and allow this to happen. It's wrong. What Darnell is doing, Darnell is speaking for a group of people in our community that the New Haven Board of Education has taken advantage of. Maybe it's time for forensic audit, so all this information could come out. You're not going to hide it. And I just want to be clear about one thing. I hate to be the troublemaker. Every time y'all see me, it's like, oh, here's Rodney with his drama. But what Rodney's talking about the truth. Rodney's a minority contractor. Rodney know where all the bones at, okay? When I gave y'all the bones and thought y'all was gonna do the right thing, you didn't. So once again, 2021, there's gonna be a certain amount of time I'm gonna give y'all to do what's right. And then after that, I'm gonna do what's right, okay? And I guarantee you, y'all not gonna be happy about that because the information that I'm sitting on, I don't want to expose it. I would like to have this conversation privately, but if I can't have it privately, it'll be in the news and then y'all explain it. It's wrong. Dr. Tracy, I've known you. I appreciate everything you guys did, especially with my kids. And to let you guys know in the New Orleans area, thank you. 20,000 masks we're giving out in our schools, and I'm starting to give them out tomorrow. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Teresa Johnson.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I am also very disappointed and embarrassed and disturbed by the activity and the actions of this board. I have been on the majority of these meetings. What I heard Mr. Golson say is, why was money taken from the snow contractor and given to a waste contractor? I did not hear black and white. So I'm assuming y'all know that these contractors are black and white and you drew that conclusion. So again, although it may be a black and white issue and that's a valid question and it should be answered, I think that everybody missed the boat and just went left. And when the question was asked, who authorized investigation on him as a board member, that question still was never answered. Yes, Dr. Tracy has the right to investigate, to protect and try to serve her staff members, but I think it crossed the board. Moving on to distant learning. Right now, I feel like because some parents have chosen not to send their kids back to school, and because that is not what Dr. Tracy wanted, our kids that are not going back to school are being treated with second priority. The same way that you take time to make sure that special needs and other children who may not be the majority are taken care of and that their education is a priority, I feel like distant learning should not suffer or be held accountable or saying, nana boo-boo, you chose not to send your child back to school, so you deal with it. That's the impression that I'm getting. And all I wanted and all we asked for was a safe, consistent plan. Everybody would love to have their children back in school, but I'm not willing to sacrifice. The director of public health has been publicly seen violating COVID protocol, and no one wants to
Time.
talk about it.
Our next speaker is CJ from Black and Brown Action, United in Action.
Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of Black and Brown United in Action and Unidad Latina en Acción. I'd like to recognize, as the prior person pointed out, the Director of Public Health who was seen violating rules and COVID protocol. I would also like to point out that it is not a cheap task to send your child into school. It should be treated as a special need, and parents and caregivers should be equipped with all necessary PPE and everything else. There should also be a standard protocol to do temperature checks and screenings at the door. I am also disappointed in the board for wasting our time and resources. We have ULA members who are getting sick. Please respect what Mr. Goulson is doing and actually think about the community first. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pat DeLucia. Pat. Okay. We will move on. Mr. DeLucia, if you come back on, raise your hand. Claudette Kidd is our next speaker. Claudette Kidd.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mayor Eliker, and Dr. Tracy. I just want to commend you all for doing a good job. Your job is not easy at all. People may think so, but like the decision makings and everything is very, very challenging. And I'd like to see some people try and do what you're doing also, because it's not easy. Moving forward, I'm going by what you all said about doing things better with the board, getting along a lot easier and everything. And the workshop that I attended, the equity and equality workshop, was excellent. And I'm hoping that the changes will happen not just within the school, but with people who come in to do work within the school and also at 54 Meadow Street. And I'd like to say to, is it Evelise, that I would very much like to get involved in if there's an equality committee, equity and equality committee, because I believe you guys will be doing the things that you're saying, and it will bring improvements to the school. So keep doing the good work and stay focused. And yeah, I'm happy with what you're doing. So thank you.
Our next speaker is Maritza Spell.
Good evening. My name is Maritza Spell. I am a parent of a child in career, and I want to thank you all for the job that you guys do. And I too have had many issues with Mr. Darnell Golson, but I am here on his defense. I think that it is really ugly what is going on. We need to really be careful, a line that we cross. It's sad to see what is happening on this board. And like Tamiko has said last week too, how, you know, they have to be micromanaging what they say now because they're going to be on this defense and this guard. We are watching. I am a parent. I am a community member. I'm going nowhere. I will fuss and I will create hoopla as long as it is needed. I want you to know we are going nowhere. We need order. And this is not a nice sight to see. This 3-4 vote, it's ugly. It's ugly. Do better. Do better. We're watching and we're going nowhere. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kristen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I wasn't gonna, didn't know whether I wanted to speak tonight, but I just wanted to say that I do believe that you need to leave Darnell alone. He's I think it looks really, it's a bad look to have, to tell Black people what they can and cannot say. And just mentioning the fact that, that something about race does not make you racist. First of all, you have to have power in order to have to be racist. And since he didn't get what he wanted, he didn't have the power. I think that we need to be very careful about the optics of who is trying to silence a Black man or a Black woman. I have often been people have tried to silence me, and it doesn't really work. And the other thing is about the school reopening. There have been several cases of COVID being found, and people keep saying, well, oh, that's to be expected. But I thought our whole point was that we were trying to slow the spread. Yes, it's to be expected. If we just let everybody go running around and do things, of course it's going to be expected. But I thought that we were trying to prevent that from happening. Already 3 to 5 schools have been affected by COVID, and New Haven cannot be compared to any other district. In New Haven, we have children in the same household who go to several different schools. So therefore, all those schools are affected. And we have households in New Haven that have 3 and 4 generations living within the same household. I mean, 12, 15 people living in the same house or apartment. It's not like in the suburbs where you have the nuclear family of 2 parents and 2 children, and they all go to the same school. So I would like us not to compare ourselves to private schools. And yes, the nice parents at Hooker are having a wonderful time, but they tend to be more nuclear than the rest of the district. And so we need to think about that and think about, the effects this is having on parents and on communities, on older people that may be living in the house, and that maybe we should, and then only 3,000 students have shown up.
Time.
Have a good night.
That concludes the list of hands raised. Madam President, you're muted.
Thank you, Dr. White. Students report.
We held our 3rd or 4th citywide meeting. We had some guest speakers from New Haven Climate Group. I think some of you talked to them, and we're just progressing steadily. But besides that, nothing else.
Thank you, Mr. Fury. And Ms. Aruna is not on the meeting, correct? Dr. White? She's not, okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, for President's report, I'll just say that I plan on assigning the committee members at our next meeting. There was a lot going on in these last 2 weeks, and I didn't get a chance to give my full attention to this, but I've received the emails of board members who want to be on specific committees. And so I'll be looking at that this week and assigning the committee members at our following meeting. Mr. Bolton?
Thank you, Madam President. We took the name of Columbus off of that school many months ago, and I have yet to see a committee set to rename the school. I'm wondering when that is going to happen.
That is correct, and I'll be talking about that in my facilities naming report.
Okay, and the pay committee that was set up to look at pay, particularly for the lower income part-timers. When is that going to happen? I know that you set up a committee, but I haven't heard of any meetings.
Mr. Conway is actually the chair of that committee, so I'll let him speak on that.
We have had one meeting already. We're setting up a series of other meetings, and I will have a report to the board at the next meeting. But we have had a meeting already. The committee set up, and it's set up of some community people, some staff, and I'll get a report back to the board next week.
Is
or next
there,
meeting.
how do you post those meetings? Do you pull them on our normal website? I haven't seen the post.
Yes, the first one we put up there. We haven't set a schedule yet, so we will post those on the website.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Conway, Mr. Golson. Superintendent's report. I just realized I skipped over you, Dr. Tracy.
That's okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, board. Good evening, members of the community who are watching and listening. The personal report, I just want to say that I am going to miss Mr. Matthew Brown, who is resigning to take on, he's been promoted in another district, and he is a building leader. Everyone knows, or who did not know, that HSC is our only teacher-run school, and Matt was a teacher leader of that school, and he's leaving us to other places. He's done a great job in increasing the graduation rate over time for HSC. So we're going to greatly miss Matt Brown. And I see Mr. Fear raising his hand. He's already crying, right? Moving on to, I have another person here, Mr. Thomas Burns. Oh, years in New Haven. And he's finally putting in his resignation, and also the other teachers who are resigning. But I need to say, we're hiring Miss Denise Charles as the Assistant Superintendent of James Hill House High School to take the place of Mr. Tarker, who left a couple of months back, and that will be to be determined because she is currently a 6th grade classroom teacher, and we are backfilling the position before we release her to that. She's had 20 years of experience in public education. That includes 15 years as an educator in Connecticut. She's very passionate about educational standards, compliance, directing instructional programs to meet the needs of at-risk youth, and building top-performing teams committed to the academic success of each student. She participated in the Future Leaders Program, and remember that was run under Gemma back in the days when we had those programs. She's held various positions of leadership: administrative intern, instructional manager, SPMT chairperson, curriculum facilitator, student staff facilitator, and team mentor. I welcome Miss Denise Charles to the fold, and she may be on here. I am not sure if Denise is here to say just a few words. Dr. White, is Denise on?
I don't.
I just promoted her.
Okay, thank you.
Twice, right?
Teamwork. Teamwork. Ms. Charles, just say a few words.
Good evening, Dr. Tracy and board members. I am honored and excited to be the new appointed assistant principal for James Hill House High School. I can't wait to get started. It's something that I have longed to do. Love working with teachers, love helping teachers and growing students' growth. So I am excited. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ms. Charles. Okay, let me move on now, and I ask the board, please accept the superintendent's personal report.
Mr. Wilcox?
I move we accept and approve the personnel report.
Mr. Conway?
Second.
Any discussion? Dr. Joyner?
Madam Chair, if I'm permitted, I'd just like to make a short comment about Matt Brown and Thomas Burns. Let me start with Burnsy. I don't know if you're listening, but no one can accuse you of not caring about the kids and of not going the extra mile for kids, especially the ones that had the most difficulty. And you will be missed. As far as Matt Brown is concerned, I was born an hour from where he was born in North Carolina. Matt is an exceptional person because he didn't buy into any of that nonsense that was going on in the South. And he is a great example of a young, patriotic, caring, committed educator. I have seen his work firsthand because I've spent a lot of time at HSC. And I wish you had not decided to leave us. We are losing some good people, and we're also gaining some good people. If you look at the talent we have in central office, our recent appointment to Hill House. But you will be missed, Matt, and keep your eye on our personnel vacancies just in case something strikes your fancy and you'd like to reapply and come back. But I've heard a lot of people talk about how hard the people in this administration work, and they do. And they're working under the most difficult circumstances, probably in the history of modern American education. And so we certainly appreciate those two young men, with maybe young being a little lavish when you talk about Thomas Burns, but Godspeed.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any further discussion?
Yes, I would just like also to say that as going to HSC myself, Matt Brown has been a wonderful leader to me and all the students at HSC. And I know every student I've talked to has been sad to see him go. He's truly been just great at, teaching us how to be better in life and how to be more mature and everything. And we'll all be sad to see him go.
Thank you, Mr. Fury. Okay, seeing no raised hands, we'll vote on the personnel report. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson, Mr.
Yes.
Goldson,
Yes.
Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Jackson, Mr. Fiore,
Yes.
and I am a yes, and so that motion passes. Okay. Finance and operations,
Madam President. I have a
Mr.
question of the
Golson.
superintendent. I have a question of the superintendent. Two questions, actually. First one is, when are we going to get an update on the opening with attendance and all that other stuff? And the second question is, when is our chief financial officer going to return to the meeting so that we can go over our financial statements? I'm very concerned about this financial statement because I found a $76,000 discrepancy. I'm wondering how that happens. And but I don't have anybody to ask. I got to ask you, Dr. Tracy, or is there someone else? I don't understand why it's not on the agenda. We said that we were going to do our finance statements the second meeting of the month. This is the second meeting of the month. So
with response to the first question, I sent, I think about half hour, 45 minutes or so, half hour before the board meeting, explaining to the board that I will be giving an update midweek about what's going on around, because that would give us a whole full week in school to see how things are going. And I will also give an update on not only attendance, but also on the magnet lottery as it pertains to the two schools. That those updates, I also informed that I'll be sending tonight at some point the Fuss and O'Neill final report to the entire board. And with regard to the finance report, we have asked that questions are sent to the finance operation meeting, and then there, just like we did last time, Mr. Golson, we responded in writing to all your questions asked. So if it would be good, and also in the interest of and other things to make sure that we send those questions ahead of time when we're having finance operation meeting. We'll be willing to answer all your questions that are asked.
So I want to make sure I understand that the chief financial officer is never going to give another public report at our board meeting? Is
No,
that what we're talking about?
I'm not saying so.
Because I just got the report in the mail a couple of days ago. I'm not a member of the finance committee, and I want to ask directly about some of these discrepancies I see in here. So I'm wondering when that's going to happen.
Yeah, but you can also send all your questions ahead of time. Each committee member, finance operations, governance questions can be sent ahead of time to be answered. And we're willing to put those answers even in writing to send back to board members.
So you're saying, I want to make sure I understand this. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So you're saying that we can no longer ask questions of any of the staff presenting reports at our board meetings. Is that what I'm hearing?
I am not saying that. I'm saying for smooth running, and we all want that of the board, that questions are sent ahead of time so that there's no question being sprung on anyone in any meeting. We have enough time to research and answer those questions, and we can answer them fully and well in an organized manner, not just sporadically.
Can I ask you why we're not having a finance committee report this evening?
I'll get back to you on that one.
That's our main, I'm sorry, Madam President, but that is our main job here, is to look at the finance and approve the finances, improve the budget. I spent years, first 3 years I spent on this board trying to get us to do monthly financial reports because we never saw them. And then when we did see them, we had a huge deficit. Now to suggest that I still haven't had the question answered why the CFO or someone from his office is not here today to talk about the monthly financial report that you put in our packages over the weekend. So I got to tell you, I'm disappointed. And but in terms of transparency, it really doesn't go very far. Finances are probably the most important issue that we deal with, and not have our monthly meeting on the finances is kind of sad. Thank you, Madam President.
I'll say that Dr. Tracy and I will discuss this issue in the next couple of weeks before our next meeting and figure out a way to either assign another staff person or have Mr. Penn come back and do the finance report. So we'll talk about it. Mr. Conway?
No, I was just thinking that, part of us just getting back to some of the things the community was saying is to really to get Mr. Penn back into his routine, if that's possible. I don't know what the situation is. And I was going to ask Dr. Tracy, do we have an estimated, you already said that you and her would talk, an estimated time of arrival when he should return? Because I do agree that those financial reports are, very important to be transparent about, and that transparency is an issue that I have concerns about as well.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. I hear you both, just know that. And so we'll figure this out. Thank you. Okay, finance and operations report, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll just mention the Finance and Operations Committee did meet as is usual last week. We did have a discussion of the monthly financial report. The recording is posted, and so there is information that was presented there going through the report. If people want to see, I certainly understand what people are saying tonight. I'm not disagreeing with any of that, but I'm also saying if anyone on the board or members of the public were interested, that recording should be posted, and it does include a full discussion of the report. So, saying that, I will also, I'm going to move the F&O items here. I was just going to check with any board members if anybody wants anything moved separately this evening. And if so, please let me know and we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to be doing one item separately anyways. All right, hearing none. Going to ask President Rivera to move abstract B or A2 of the school readiness program. Might seem a little odd to recuse myself on us receiving money. The reason why I'm doing so is it lists inside that some of that money is currently planned to go to a contract for Clifford Beers. My wife works on a federally funded grant project for Clifford Beers as a community health officer, or community health person. So I am recusing myself on that. So Madam President.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wilcox. I move abstract A2, the Quality Enhancement School Readiness Program. Is there a second? Mr. Conway?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Goldson?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Fiore?
Yes.
And I am a yes, and so that motion passes. Thank you.
A point of order, shouldn't you allow Mr. Wilcox to actually abstain during that vote, so it's in the record?
All right,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Mr. Wilcox?
Recused.
Thank you. Okay, and that motion passes. Go ahead, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you very much. I would now like to move that we approve the remaining abstract, the 4 agreements, and the 3 contracts that are listed on our agenda.
Is there a second, Mr. Conway? Any
Second.
discussion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Goldson? Mr. Goldson?
Yes.
Dr. Jackson? Dr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker? Thank you,
Yes.
Dr. Jackson. Mr. Fiore?
Yes.
Okay. And so that motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And just before we end this section, I would just like, as I typically do, the Finance and Operations Committee, we're always open for questions or to address concerns. Current committee makeup has been myself, President Rivera, and Mr. Conaway. I'm sure they won't mind me speaking on behalf of the committee here to say that we're happy to hear about any of these concerns. Often, just so the public knows, the typical workflow of things is after the board meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday, discussion items get worked out for the next Finance and Operations Committee meeting. They often include finance and operations issues that come up during board meetings or that board members or others raise. So as examples of some of the finance and operation items that did come up immediately after a board meeting, as we've looked at litigation fees, legal fees and contractors, minority and women-owned contractors. We've revised the agreement memo form, the cover sheet that goes on all agreements that we look at, so it can collect pertinent information that board members were interested in having access to. Also, information on updates of not to exceed change orders and so on. So we do take a look at this, and if there's any concerns, big or small, we're happy to try to address them. And all the things that I've mentioned, the various reports and spreadsheets that come from those discussions are posted on the Finance and Operations site connected to those meetings under the other information. So if there are real concerns, we really want to address them. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox.
Head Start report. So we did have a Head Start meeting. We had to move it to today. So one benefit of that is we did get an update of how things have been going with the Head Start programs. A couple of things I just want to mention very briefly is one bit of good news that was reported in the meeting today is we did receive our funding letter for next year's funding for the Head Start program of 5.9 million. So that's good. And we've also are outside of, I believe, all, I'm blanking on the exact phrasing, but government ain't mad at us anymore, for lack of a better way to put it. So we're outside of the previous things that we were being cited for. And so that's great. And thanks to director of the program, Liz Gaffney, and also Pamela Augustine Jefferson and Monique Brunson and others have been very instrumental in making sure that those things are going well. They report things are going well with the in-person and their supplies are in place, and that's what I have for my notes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Governance report, Dr. Jackson.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to point out that Mr. Wilcox, Miss Gaffney is a Shaw girl like me, so you know how we get down. So governance has been very, very busy, and I am proud to bring forth to the board for the first read the policy 5131, which is the conduct and discipline policy. Along with that, within that is the code of conduct. And just let me give you a little bit of history. This has been like 7, 8 years in the making. So when I came in 4 years ago, it was kind of still there. They've been working on for this long. And I must say that the document is robust. There's a lot to find, to learn in this document. A lot of restoration is within this document. So please read it. And as with all of what I bring to you, questions are welcome. Anything that you think needs to be adjusted. This is the first read. It's going to take you some time to go through it. I know, Darnell, you're going to have your pen with your little marks. So I welcome that. My committee that is, I would say, my the governance crew. We have a very nice culture in governance. Dr. Joyner can attest to this, where documents are brought forth. We have working groups and we come to the table and we do hard work. I'm just really proud of this because it's finally before you. So please look at that at your leisure and bring forth anything that I need to bring back to my committee. I would say as soon as possible because I would like to make sure the second read comes at the next meeting. An update on the school resource officer team. They have come to some agreement that they will bring to governance for us to, I'm sure, kindly bring to the full board as soon as possible. And I know that that's going to also keep you busy with reviewing that also. Let me see what else, my notes. And just would like to also say the remainder of our 6,000 series will also come before you. We did a lot of that already. What's left, we will bring to you in block because we really want to finish this series. So when it does come to you, it will be in block. Again, a robust read for you, but come on, what else do you have to do but read governance literature? That being said, and when we finally do pass our conduct and discipline, I would like for the players who have been working on this for the last 7 years to also be able to just be recognized and brought to the screen. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Teaching and learning report, Dr. Joyner and Mr. Conaway.
Thank you. Actually, I'll be reporting on 2 meetings, and I think that in an environment like we're in now, it's important for the staff to recognize that we appreciate their hard work. I guess I'll start with the leadership and support of the assistant superintendents and the way in which they relate to principals in terms of supporting them. Both of them know what it's like and understand it. And the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, who has done a wonderful job. So the first meeting on December 16th, we had the principals to come in. And Mr. Conaway and I met last summer, and we wanted to hear from all the stakeholders, and he'll comment as well. We wanted to hear from all the stakeholders. And so we have heard from students, teachers, parents, assistant principals, and principals. The meeting on the 16th, we had Sequala Coleman, star principal Eddie Cordero, Monique Brunson, Matt Brown, Derek Stevenson, Diane Spence, who's the dean of our principals, and a number of others that reported on them. Valerie Robinson, Rosalind Garcia, Kathy Matern, and Robert McCain. And they actually gave us an insight into what's going on in the schools in this COVID pandemic. And anything I missed, Mr. Conaway, I hope that you could fill in. Really impressed by our principals. It's a lot harder to do this job now than it's probably ever been, and they are up to the task. The second part of the meeting, we wanted to hear about what we're doing as a district to improve the receptive and expressive language skills of our students. As you know, language is unlocks every content area door, and our kids' ability to read and write and think well and comprehend, critically important to their doing well in school and in life. And that was followed up by a second meeting, which addressed the issues of multilingual learners. And thankfully, we have so many people in this district who themselves were multilingual learners, and they certainly understand what it's like, both emotionally, intellectually, and in every other way for a child to come here speaking a language other than English, when the transmission of academic material is primarily in English. And I'm going to say something about a program that I'm really impressed with and a person that I'm really impressed with. But we also had a side conversation prior to the meeting, Evie Velasquez and I, that it's not only having English as a second language, but there's also a problem with children who speak English dialect. And as a child who did speak English dialect in the South, I think the first time I saw filet mignon, I call it filet mignon. And the first time I saw fatigued, I call it fatigued. And of course, you know, when you're trying to act smart and you're with people, you say, oh, I'm really fatigued. What is that? And so I think that because our language is a hybrid language, then, you know, if we use the phonetic system, then you can mispronounce a word. And you can look like you're not smart. And that happens a lot with children with dialects. But there's nothing wrong with dialect, but it's important for them to learn to speak the language. She calls it the dominant language. I call it the standard language. And it could be both, dominant and standard. But it is the language of transmission of intellectual ideas as well as contracts and what have you. And I remind people that Dr. King gave the I have a dream speech, not the I be having a dream speech, because he knew the distinction between the two. Doesn't mean that one is bad, but it simply means that there's a linguistic pecking order, and certain languages are not considered at the level of others. The thing that really impressed me, and when I finish, I'm going to ask my colleague, Mr. Conaway, to continue, was that we have something called the Welcome Center or the Newcomers Center, And it's run by a phenomenal young man, Michael Soares. Is that a Portuguese surname? Soares.
Probably.
Yeah, and it's probably not. I don't want to mispronounce, particularly when we're talking about language.
Suarez and it's Brazilian.
Yeah, I think it's Portuguese because that's a language that was a colonial power in Brazil. So Soares.
Suarez.
Yep.
Suarez. It's not the same as Spanish, I don't think. Is it?
No. Spanish is with a Z and a U.
Absolutely. So he's running a center where he welcomes kids that come to the district and to the community. And it may not have all the resources that it needs. I don't think anything we have in New Haven has all the resources that it needs, but this is almost like an appeal. If there's anybody who would like to make a contribution to that center, please feel free to do so, because these are kids who typically come to this country not speaking English and also being poor as well. And I would argue too that there are Southern migrants that come up that don't speak standard English, and they're poor as well in many cases. I know because I was one of them. And one of my favorite scriptures is from the book of Exodus. And the children of Israel are told, "Do not vex or oppress a stranger, for you were once strangers in Egypt." And so if we are the ones that can do the most for those children. And that young man is really working very hard. The leadership in our multilingual department is working really hard, and they deserve our applause and our support. Mr. Conaway, you're not muted.
I want to talk about the culture of the committee. It's a very great culture. It's really purely teaching and learning. I like the panel model. The principals gave us some insight. Mr. Joyner, we have not spoke to the assistant principals yet. That's something that we need to do. We need to set up because assistant principals have different roles in teaching and learning. So we need to get them up on teaching and learning. And I know we said we're going to do that. The English Learner Program, just want to add what you said, the biliteracy, the ESOL, the organization. I've watched that whole department grow, and there's a little pullback on it. So Dr. Tracy, we're asking that we probably look for more resources on that because they're needed. I want to ditto what you said about the Welcome Center. And finally, I just think that that teaching and learning is going very well. I like the tone of it. Ms. Velasquez, thank you and your staff for a job well done. And I invite other board members, if they have a chance, to come check out that T&L committee, because some very, very exciting things are going on there. So that's all. Dr. Joyner has said it best. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last thing, all of those principals, every one of them went out of their way to try to raise funds to help get gifts for their children. I was particularly impressed with Derek Stevenson and Diane Spence. Derek was out in the cold weather trying to drum up gifts for the kids in his school. And having watched him grow up, it's especially pleasing for me to see a young man that has come back to his community and is working with some of our most challenged kids. So kudos, shout outs, and blessings to our staff, central office, building, teachers, support staff, everybody that's making a difference in this district. Like Kermit the Frog said, it's not easy being green. It's not easy being an educator, especially now.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Food Service Task Group, Mr. Conaway.
Real quickly, I also want to talk about the culture of this committee. It's a very good culture. It's good culture. It's we're growing. But we talked in the food service committee. Mostly we continue to talk about life-threatening food issues and allergies. We have to keep that on the agenda. We really, really, really just have to stay on top of that. We need to protect those students. More students will be coming back. I know the last count I heard, there was about 3,000 or 4,000 students come back. But as we get closer to full opening, we're going to have to just really just look at this real closely. We talked about the budget, with COVID, we weren't servicing as many parents with food as we wanted to, but that's growing. With meal distribution, we do have a food service website. Please look at that, and that's always developing. We have a bus that delivers food to specific communities in the country. In the city. I think that right now, at the last meeting, we had 39 schools open. We probably have all 47 of those schools open where we're doing food distribution. So food distribution is a very, very important component of this district. I want to thank Gail and her staff for what they do, Cheryl, for keeping us on task, and it's just something that we just have to continue work on. We're not perfect, and we have work to do, and those are things that we're working on. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Conaway. Dr. Jackson?
Thank you for that report. And I'm just questioning about the life-threatening allergies. Now, are you guys working on Larry? Larry? Where'd he go? Larry? I'll ask him when he comes back, Madam Chair.
Yes. Sounds good. For facility naming report, I don't have a report at this time. However, one of the stipulations, I guess, for lack of a better word, of the policy is that we all appoint that we all bring forward 2 members for that committee. And so please forward me your choices for committee members by next Monday so that we can start the process of getting that going and scheduling our next meeting. Mr. Conaway?
I'm sorry, Dr. Jackson was asking me a question. I accidentally pushed the wrong button. But Dr. Jackson, you were talking about food allergies.
Now, you're lucky I'm not sensitive. So listen, the question is, are we working on that chain of custody that was started? I guess Mr. Wilcox has started that around children with life-threatening allergies once they hit the buildings. Is that still in the works?
I believe it's being handled at the building level. I think that one of the things is we want much more clarity on it. That's why we keep it on the agenda, and we want to identify those students. And it's different now because you have hybrid and you have some kids that are virtual. So it's just an ongoing thing. So Mr. Wilcox, you want to give a shot at that?
Yeah, I'll just mention that at our next food service task force meeting, hopefully Dr. Vasquez will be able to be there and talk about the work that the school nurses have been doing. My understanding is they spent a lot of September and October updating, making sure all the health records are updated. There is always going to be questions and things that we need to make sure needs to be going well for the food service task force. The life-threatening allergies related to food is a standing agenda item, and there's been progress made, but then we also need to make sure that the progress gets locked in. I know there's been a lot of training being done, but of course new staff members come in, so I think something that we're going to need to finalize or to make happen is the documentation of these practices so that it can also be posted on the website so parents can see them, and then as new people come into the district, they can see it as well.
And I just want to just stress that it's certainly not perfect, because there are some concerns. I might want to say some very heavy concerns about that. And that's why we wanted to stay on the agenda item. And as the students come back, we need to really pick up where we left off. We need to make sure that nursing is in place in those schools, and that we're watching, we're just keeping a very, very close eye on these students, because we do not want any tragedies.
And my second question is, you talked about food delivery, and I had a concern with the children that are being the children that are in school, not necessarily our remote children, but the children that have been in school and may be sent home to quarantine. Are we delivering their breakfast and lunch, seeing that those kids were in school and that those meals were being, you know what I'm saying, counted for them, parent-wise, household-wide also, because that is an unexpected continue to stay home? Are we doing anything around making sure that those children that are staying home, quarantine, because getting them their meals also going to help keep the family home, because part of that is staying home, and we want them to be able to quarantine safely for everyone. So are we doing anything around that?
Since this is we've just been back for less than a week, I would think so, but I can't answer that concretely. Does anybody from administration want to give that a shot? Matt or
Mr. Wilcox? Mhm.
I would just say that sounds like an excellent thing to have on our next meeting agenda, but also not that it has to wait until then. I do know that there's been some food delivery to families through folks like from the citywide parent team and some others, in addition to some of the other, I don't know what the district specific ones are, but I mean, that's a good point that we should take into account.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. I think we would be remiss if we didn't give a big shout out to the parents, the citywide parents group, especially Ife Waters, who both cajoled and threatened us so many times to move this forward. I mean, from the beginning of my term on this board 5 years ago, she was on this, and it took us a while to catch up to her, but I'm glad that she pushed this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Mr. Conway, does that conclude your report?
I think Dr. Tracy and Keisha Hannah's read either one, if they have something else they want to add. So we'll let them, I just want them to just, then that can conclude it.
Dr. Tracy?
So, Dr. Jackson, you and I have been emailing each other, and it was a very good point you raised. And the principals are keeping in touch with families, because we want to keep their privacy, so not so many people are converging. Some people don't want anyone to know that they have COVID, put it that way. They want to keep it private. So we're keeping that in-house, and people are taking care of business. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Ms. Hannans?
No, I didn't have anything to
Okay,
add.
sounds good. Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. For Citywide School Building Committee, we met on January 14th. The draft minutes are posted on our website. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 11th at 4:30. We discussed the Quinnipiac and West Rock schools inspections. Fuss and O'Neill had been working through the checklist on what is required to open the schools, and we were, at that point, we were waiting the narrative report to accompany the checklist. Mr. Barbarata provided an update regarding the various projects at several schools. He noted concerns regarding playground repairs and stated that the board and the city of New Haven will come up with a concept for the Edgewood playground, and apparently there's money set aside for that project. The lead project commenced this past week, and Mr. Barbarata will provide the committee with before and after photos once it's completed. And the Doosan fuel cell power cells for Hill Central and Clemente are almost at the end of its life. However, they were able to extend it for an additional year. The city and Board of Ed should look into alternative for future fuel cells to use, according to Mr. Barbarata. And Mr. Lockey, the grant writer, provided the board with details of the grants available, the requirements for the much needed repairs at Sound School. And apparently the resolutions are scheduled for review by the Board of Alders at the upcoming February 1st meeting. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Mr. Goldson and then Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Madam President. Could you provide us with a list of who is on that building committee? Last time I saw that was more than a year and a half ago. So.
Yes, I can, but off the top of my head, I cannot. So I'll have to email it to you all. Dr. Jackson?
Madam President, in your report, you said the checklist to open the schools. So we're going to be opening those schools? I mean, I don't know.
No, it's not necessary that we'll be opening, but they have to come up with a checklist of what it would take to reopen the schools if we were to reopen. But I'm sure there's also going to be a large cost associated to that. So.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jackson. Mr. Conway?
I also want to get to the point. We had some unfinished business that we want to do with some namings at Hill House High School. I just, we could get an update on that at the next meeting as to what the specific steps we will take into that. And
yeah, so I'll just say really quickly, that's the new facilities naming committee policy that we put together. So that's why I'm asking for everyone to send me the two persons that they would like appointed to that committee so we can start working on some of these, the Hill House issues being one of them and Columbus as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the next item, I'm going to put forward a motion. I'm going to move to postpone until our next meeting. There was some information that we needed for this meeting, and we don't have anything on that yet. So I'd like to postpone that till the next meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Goldson?
Not quite sure what we're postponing. What are we postponing again?
It's the discussion and possible action concerning the report from attorney Amita Patel Rossetti.
We're going to have an additional discussion past the 4.5-hour discussion we had last Thursday.
Well, there was the issue of taking down the report that was still pending because we need to find out if that's possible, and then some possible motions. So yeah, there's still some things pending on that.
This never ends. Okay, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Oh, wait, we have to vote on the motion to postpone.
Oh, okay.
Give me one second. Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Jackson? Dr. Jackson?
Yes.
He's
Yes.
frozen. Oh, okay. Mr. Goldson?
Abstain. I'm not sure what we're voting on. So.
Mr. Conway? Mr. Conway?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Fiore? Mr. Fiore is gone? Okay.
Yeah.
He's not here, and I am a yes, and so that motion passes. Dr. Tracy, you had a comment or question?
No, I just want to say to the board, in the email I sent you, if you want a hard copy of the first and only report, please let me know so I could have my staff copy it for you. Not too long from now, I will send you the electronic version of the report, because I know the elders also wanted to get a copy of the report, and I would not send it until I send it to my board first. So you'll be getting that tonight, but if you want a hard copy, just let me know. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn now.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson, Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Conaway,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Good meeting, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night. Good night.